And yeah, thank you everyone for joining tonight. My name is Megan. I am the coordinator of CodePink's China's Not Our Enemy campaign, and tonight we're hosting a webinar with Fred Teng called China's Vision for the Future. I don't want to give too much of an introduction because I think, my questions cover a lot and I've got quite a few of them. And Fred, I know you wanted me to keep your introduction short as well, so I will just say this. Fred Teng, President of the America-China Public Affairs Institute and a leading voice in U.S. China relations. And we are very, very excited to have you here with us today. So I want to just jump right into it. I have so many questions for you, and I want to leave some time for questions, audience questions at the end. And please, everyone, put your questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. So, Fred, in April, you presented a speech at the Harvard Kennedy China Conference titled China's Vision for the Future of Multilateral Organizations. I think, we can all agree that the global order is shifting, going from years of US global domination to a new multipolarity, which is undoubtedly shifting the power dynamics within multilateral organizations. What would you say China's role in all of this is, and how has it contributed to this changing international landscape?
Right. So after the Second World War, a number of international organizations were formed, including the United Nations, the IMF, the World Bank. When they're formed, is to keep the world in terms of order and coordination. China was at the inception. They were the signatory to all these organizations. However, the People's Republic of China has not been involved for the first 30 years. So at that time, most of the Western powers were dominating the narrative, and many of the developing countries didn't have much of a voice. For the last 50 years, since China's joining the United Nations and so forth, right now they are the second largest contributors to the United Nations funding, and they pay on time. Secondly is they also have the most peacekeeping forces among the permanent Security Council members. What China wants to do is really play a role in this global arena, so that they can be a partner, but also they want to be an advocate of those who does not have a voice and try to bring their position into this as well. So, I'm just want to talk a little bit. I do want to mention I have sent to Megan the organizations I'm going to be talking about today with the links. And the links I try to have Wikipedia, even though it's not 100% accurate information, but it's close enough. And I hope that if you're interested in any of the organizations, you can go to those links and take a look and see for yourself.
Yes, and I'll add that to the chat as well for everyone to have. Right. So, as you were saying, along with these changes, and these already existing international institutions, we've seen the creation of new institutions, new joint agreements, like you mentioned, BRIC, ASEAN. There was a recent GCC China conference, which brought together China, Asia countries, and the Persian Gulf countries to discuss economic collaboration, visions for the future, which, was undoubtedly a symbol of this new non-aligned foreign policy across these regions and really in the entire global South. And I think a lot of people have been feeling very hopeless in this current climate with how so many Western nations have been complicit in the ongoing genocide in Gaza and other global injustices. And I've heard a lot of people recently starting to bring up China in these spaces where we talk about all of these issues as a symbol of hope. And I really like this quote from your speech. You said, "China is not a threat. It is a rising opportunity to create a stronger, better, more resilient world for all. Do you think the rise of China and the creation of these new institutions and pathways provides some hope for a better future, for a shared future that takes into account the interests of all
Yeah,
people, including those in the global South?
I think one of the example is in the last 40 years, China has not been involved in any wars, which really coincides with Koping's ideas as well. Uh, and what happened is that, from my observation, is the Western countries, many of them, including the United States, Great Britain, and Germany, and France, and Belgium, and so forth, they historically have profited from war. Their war profiteering is their business model. But China has a new model, which is not found anywhere else. So a lot of people do not understand this whole concept at all. China's concept is peace profiteering. So today, anywhere there is peace, China will work with those countries and they both will be profitable from working with each other. Whereas war, China does not make money. They will lose their investments. If there's instability within their own countries, they will have a slowdown. So it is basically also a business model to make things work. Um, and and also today, many people have asked me about the conflicts between Gaza and Israel, as well as Russia and Ukraine, as well as Pakistan and India, so on and so forth. I told them from my observation is that wherever there's conflict between two countries, um, China's answer to that is always stop fighting, cease fire, and negotiate through political means, whether these countries are friends or enemies. They always have only one answer, very consistent, and you will continue to see, I'm sure we'll have other conflicts. China will not be aiding one side or the other. They will try to help creating, stop the fighting, and then so that these countries can minimize the harm to the civilian people, the loss of lives, and so forth. And so a lot of people have to second guess in terms of what they're doing, but I would say this is a very consistent view that they have.
Yeah, they really emphasize in their foreign policy the principles of peaceful coexistence.
Right.
Mhm.
And I think talking about, because the UN, the IMF, the World Banks, they're legacy organizations, so it's been around for a long time. Do they need reform? Yes, but I do not think China want to push back or destroy any of these organizations. They like to work on reform within and make these organizations workable for all the countries. But in addition, they also see there are opportunities as also of lack of things, just like the Asian AIIB. Uh, there is a development bank for Asia, uh, and and that's working very. And for security, they have the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is, again, they work with different countries to work together. It's not a China initiative. Many of them, they just participate, like the ASEAN countries. China is not a member of the ASEAN. They always will be participating in there because they want to let the ASEAN countries to speak for themselves. Because if all of the Asian countries in the room and then there's China, like a big elephant in there, they understand that. So they will want them to speak out. They will want them to also talk about like the conflict of the maritime disputes and all of these different things. And then they will also try to work with it uh, to make this a better solution out of all. The Belt and Road Initiative, which is very interesting, many people also have misconception, mischaracterization, and misguided ideas about the Belt and Road. Belt and Road initiative actually is an initiative that 150 countries become part of it. So you all know it's very hard to start any infrastructure projects within one country. But this is like doing that with 150 times over, one at a time. Of course, there's problems. Whenever there's an infrastructure problem, certainly safety issues, certainly might be corruption issues, certainly there are many, many different issues that has to be worked out. And working with 150 countries is quite difficult, but there are results that we can see. I know a former Chinese ambassador to Indonesia, and the Indonesia president is so happy about the high-speed rail that's built in Indonesia. He always claimed that Indonesia is the second country in the world have a high-speed rail. And wherever there's a foreign dignitary visiting Indonesia, he always brings them to ride it. And they're building another one. I recently talked to a scholar from Iran, and he's from traveling between Tehran and Brussels. So he's internationally, and I mentioned to him about China is helping Egypt building part of their new capital, and he didn't believe me because he only see it in the Western media. He didn't see any of that, and then so I brought a former Egyptian minister. I said, you tell him, you tell him. Then he said, yeah, we have government buildings that we're building ourselves, and China is coming in to build a business district for us, all the buildings, all the infrastructure. And not only that, they're going to bring in, businesses so that it become a very vibrant economy as well. So there are a lot of things China is doing, but the people just because they're not used to it, because these ideas are so new, they don't think that this is possible, that humans can help each other instead of a zero-sum game of taking from each other. The whole idea of Belt and Road actually started because there were many landlocked countries without the seaports, and certainly they're very poor, so they don't have airports either. So the idea was building railroad, connecting them so their economy can also be vibrant. And that was the whole concept, but it just become bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, a couple of countries withdraw from it, but that's not because of the project's failure, but more because of their domestic politics. Italy is one of them, and Panama is recently one of them, not because these projects are bad, but they have their domestic politics to deal with or international pressure on them. So overall, I will see that we will see much, much more of the connecting the world. And I think the next wave of connecting is really energy, clean energy.
Yeah, there's a few things that you said there that I sort of want to emphasize, because looking specifically at, for instance, China's global security initiative, it's difficult not to notice how different the language on security is compared to, U.S. national security rhetoric. For instance, the initiative is based on mutual respect, on peaceful resolution through dialogue, completely rejecting the zero-sum mentality that the safety of one nation comes at the expense of another nation. And the US, in comparison, seems to only think in terms of this Cold War zero-sum mentality, saying that any loss of China is a gain to the US and vice versa. I've even heard congresspeople, explicitly state that whatever China wants us to do, we should do the complete opposite as, a sort of theoretical policy framework, which is completely absurd. But I mean, why do you think we have these such competing worldviews?
Well, first of all, the United States, and I'm American, we're a very young country. 200-something years is really a tiny dot in the history. And China has 5,000 years of history. They make a lot of mistakes. Historically, they're learning. And I think one of the things these days, like I said, in the last 40 years, they have not getting into any of the war. They try to refrain from any of these. It's because it doesn't work. You cannot kill people to make things work. You just cannot kill people to make things work. The solution is not by force. It's really, you have to compromise with each other and make things work. Some of the things they're trying to do, and some of my friends feel it like they bring the Saudi and Iran together. Because in order for the Middle East to have peace, these Arab countries, as well as the Palestinians, they have to work together instead of being divided, because we will not have peace if they don't even work with each other. So there was a conference, the different fractions of the Palestinians actually was in Beijing. They talked to each other, and if they can work together, then they can work with Israel, they can work with others much more collectively, then a solution can really come. Because if you have 100 different parties and you make peace with one and the other don't, it doesn't work. So people have to buy in together and to work. So these are some of the things that China, sometimes because the language is originated from Chinese, sometimes the language is a little bit archaic, a little hard to understand. Like this, a shared future for mankind. Basically, is the Chinese is 人类命运共同体, meaning 人类 is the humans, 命运 is our fate, and the 共同体 is that our collective body. So in Chinese, it makes sense, but sometimes in English, it's a little bit harder. I think over time, we can probably find ways to express this much better and people understand what's going on. Like the Bell and Roll, one Bell and Roll, and now it's called Bell and Roll Initiative, which is a little bit smoother than before. So yeah.
Well, I quite like the names that they choose for stuff. I find them poetic.
Yeah. Yes.
You kind of talked a little bit about it. You mentioned here and there, but what are some common misconceptions that you've seen in the West and Western mainstream media about China and about China's, global vision and what they're doing?
I think some of it, especially the older people, nothing against the older people, but those who were born in the 40s, 50s, maybe even the 60s, their concept of the world is very different. When they hear communist, they feel it's immediately, automatically, that becomes the enemy. But they have to look at it today. I mean, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are very different 100 years ago than today, in terms of what are the things they support and what are the things that they are against. And certainly, I think the Chinese Communist Party, which is the institution, I would say government managers are really selected from. And you don't have to be a Communist Party member, I think, to work for the government. But a lot of them, this is a system of recruiting, a system of training, development, as well as discipline. So this is a China system, and a lot of times people don't understand. China is keep on changing. It's always evolving. People think they don't change. They're not the same from 5 years ago, and they're not the same from 10 years ago. If they're not having that kind of flexibility, they would not have done what they have done today. But because I go to China quite often, I talk to the people. Really, right now, everybody is talking about responsibility to improve the quality of life for the people. And that's very, very, it's no political rhetoric. Basically, it's what can you do? How we can make it better. Give you an example. I was in China at a innovation center 5 years ago. They have a driverless car on a platform. This is a driverless car. And oh, great. Last month I went back. They set aside one of the area. This is just one of the cities in China, but there are many cities in China. They set aside 600 acres of land, a place outside of Beijing called Yizhuang, and sometimes they call E Town because it's E, and 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 this place has 600 acres of land that driverless cars. The one I was in, does not even have a steering wheel. The car I'm in, it's a rectangular box with windows all over. And when I walk in, I don't have to bend down my head because the car is quite tall. Walk in, 8 of us can sit in there, and the car just drives on the street, changing lanes, making turns, and you can see half the car because of those areas. They're experimenting uh, these driverless cars. Uh, they not only using the GPS, but they're also using the signal lights as triangulation to make it more accurate. Now, again, one of the changes is China in the past, when they make a mistake, when there's an accident, they don't like people to know about it because they feel it's a failure. But today, they take it very, very seriously. Every accident, they told me that they have placed a lot of emphasis to find out what is the cause of these accidents and how they occur, and how they can avoid these things from happening. So by using a very engineered scientific way of doing this, they're doing better and better and better. And I don't know, many of you, have you been to China? Today's China is very electronically uh, uh, run, including there is no money you can pick up on the street anymore because nobody carries money. So there is no loose change dropping on the streets. And everybody is using the phone and do their payment. And I make a fun of this. It's like, well, there's not too many beggars, but even the beggars are using a QR code that they show to you. You scan the QR code. This is how you give them money. So, so the world that they're living is very, very different right now. But the United States, by sometimes giving us these information and including our media, it's really misguiding us that when we see that, when people travel to China, they see a very, very different world. Um, so it's hard. I mean, I'm trying to tell people, don't take my word for it. Please go back to China and visit and talk to the people yourself. Go to places. I would say most of the places is people can go. But I see some raising hands. So Megan, how do you want to handle this?
Yeah, well, we can leave the questions at the end.
Okay,
Live
okay.
questions.
I'll answer a couple more of your questions, and then we'll go into the audience. How's that?
That sounds perfect.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to ask you, I'm curious about China's involvement in COP and other global climate initiatives, the emphasis it has put on this necessity to work toward a sustainable future, because I think the average American still sees China as, the greatest contributor to the climate crisis, which, first of all, isn't true. It's Western nations that have been heavily polluting the environment since the Industrial Revolution, who've contributed to a vast extent of CO2 emissions. Though, in recent years, China's very rapid development certainly boosted its emissions. It's also pioneered this internal green revolution in the past decade. And if I'm correct, has created, for instance, more solar panels in 1 year than the US ever has. And it's made renewable tech available and affordable for all other nations. And this, of course, has had backlash from US executives who complain that the non-renewable tech sector won't make them any money anymore because China's done it first and better. And this also led to US putting high tariffs on these goods, even at the expense of the planet. Can you talk a little bit more about that? How do you compare like the actions of the US and China, and is there hope for cooperation?
So sometimes I think that rightly so, United States corporations are looking for profit, but not everything should be profit driven. First, infrastructure. When you build a road, you should not be looking for instantly have profit. coming back. Because when you build a road, people can travel to go to work, goods can be transported. They bring out a lot of benefits out of their transportation. The climate and environment is the same thing. When you're building these things, the profit margin should not be huge. It should be benefiting the people. It should be saving our planet. It should be a lot of benefit to that. I was in March, I went to this forum called Boao Forum for Asia. It is mostly Asian countries, but European countries as well. And I saw this exhibition about energy, clean energy, basically there's the wind power, the solar power, hydrogen, and as well a nuclear. And they're working on all of these clean energy, and they're supplying to some of the neighboring countries as well. I really feel China is going to be very big, probably in the next decades or so, that the Western countries, again, will be very upset that China is doing that. But they are finding ways to do things to create energy and in a clean way. China understand it's good for themselves. When it first happens, when our U.S. ambassador in China was picking on China about China's air quality, the PMIs, and China was very high at the beginning. Of course, they're embarrassed, but they think about it. They use it to their advantage. They use the same technology that U.S. embassy is monitoring, and they put it all over China. So they find out where the origin of the pollution is from. Now, sometimes they still do it a little bit overboard, very draconian in a way, because when they want to do this, they want to shut down the factories and making fresh air. But it is working. I would say that in the past, I would say 10 years ago, I go back to China during Chinese New Year, because before Chinese New Year, the factories were rushing for it. The air quality was bad. My throat hurts. Now you go to Beijing, blue sky all the time. So I think that people have to see is China is changing all the time. They're trying to improve themselves. They're not trying to. So the government policy is looking at improving quality of life and not just driven by profit. And I think that we should take advantage of some of that instead of just saying, well, we have to make profit in everything, such as solar panel. U.S. have put in a lot of money subsidizing companies, but they still fail as China is making the solar panel. Even though China is making the solar panel, maybe some of the businesses saying, well, there's a competition. But just think about China can make the solar panel at a less expensive cost. The solar panel installer, they benefit from it because we have our laborers installing these things on rooftops. So without these relatively cheaper price, how are they going to have this availability? So there are benefits from a lot of these kind of things that we don't see. We only see the side that's maybe they feel it's a competition, but they have not seen the side that's benefiting the United States. But overall, I think they're doing a lot. Today I met with a scholar from Sichuan University from Shanghai, and they're here. They're going to Harvard next month, and then they're doing a lot of research about energy, about clean energy. Even though they're doing their own, they're going all over the world to study to see how they can make it better. And I think, again, that sometimes is mischaracterized as being spy or whatever it is, but it's just learning a better practice in business so they can improve themselves. It's very open.
Yeah, I've always seen China's policy making is very adaptive, as in they'll come up with a policy and they'll try it out in one province, and if it doesn't work, then it's gone. If it does work, okay, we'll use it in all the other places. But they're not afraid to be wrong about something. They're not, and because they know, the end goal is to improve. And I was so shocked. I was just in China and I hadn't been there for like about 6 years, and I was amazed by the improvement in the air quality. It was even in Beijing, it was better than it is here where I'm at in DC. And it's crazy to see all the electric vehicles on the road in China. They all have the green license plate and the rows and rows of solar panels and in the desert regions. And there's been a very um extreme reforestation effort. I think more trees have been planted in China than like
Yeah.
anywhere else in the world,
I
which
mean, even in a city like Shanghai, like New York City here, real estate properties are very expensive, but the Shanghai government dedicated 60% of the land to parks instead of building buildings. So as they tearing down older buildings, some of them are turning into parks because they want to make it more green. And they're also expanding the cities. Uh, you know, I heard they're moving Beijing outside of Beijing. I don't understand at all. So I think last year I went to see how they're moving it. So they're moving all the conference center to a place called Yanxihu, which is outside Beijing. And then all the big fashion shows and film festivals, they're moving out there. They're moving the municipal government to Tongzhou, and 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 it's again. So once I go see it, sometimes you cannot just by reading the report, you don't understand what they're doing it. But when you see it, they're expanding the metropolitan so that the services can be delivered smoothly. I complained to China many years ago about the capacity issues about education and healthcare, and and they come back to me saying, well, you know, Mr. Tang, we understand your concern, but they're very engineering minded. They say, first, we need to build a road. Second, we need to have electricity. Third, we need to have water. Fourth, we need to have communications. Today, if we build a school in a very poor village, the kids cannot even get there. So what good it is? So believe us, we're going to be having plans and systematically in doing all this. So I think that again, the China system is good for China maybe, but it's not saying that anyone else have to adopt it. But we need to have every country need to have a system to care about the quality of life of own citizens. We cannot have changing the water system as a result. The whole town is contaminated, the water pipes. I mean, that kind of things is just wrong to do. And I think that certainly today's America, stopping vaccines and hey, make it a choice. Maybe people don't want to do it. That's their choice. It's not forced. But not making that available, I think that is something is wrong to do.
yeah, and I also think, China's perspective of, trying to improve the lives of people has also to do a degree with this idea that everyone needs to have equality or a good quality of life in order to, generate stability in the country. And it's kind of a bit of like a, Marxist perspective as well. And I think you also see that in their, foreign policy, which is, well, if other countries develop and we achieve a multipolarity in the world and equality for all people, then that will create just a much more stable, conflict-free world.
I think that, United States actually been through decades trying to improve things, trying to have more equality for its people, for different people, different social class, different people from different backgrounds, and sometimes have success. But right now, if we're going to take our diversity, equality, if any of these policies, let's say going extreme one way or the other, we can always adjust that. But taking that away, saying you cannot talk about equality anymore, that's really destroying our own system. And I think that, you know, uh, it just worries me a little bit in terms of what's happening here. Um, China yes, I think if you go to China, you can ask its citizens. Some of them might complain about the government. Every country always have people complaining about government. But if you ask them, how is their life? I would tell you, Chinese people having probably the best prosperity, best equality, best democracy in the last 5,000 years. This is the best time of their life ever in the history of China. In the past, there's great dynasties and so forth. It's only some of the people who are wealthy is doing well. The poor people are doing very, very poorly. They have hungers, they have so forth. Uh, that kind of situation is very, very little, except, from area that's very hard to transport to. And I mean, I was in Tibet. Every county, they have electricity now. So they're still building about one new airport every week in China. So it's amazing. Uh, but quality of life, I think, for the people is very important above everything else.
Yeah. And sort of tangential to that, my last question before we go into audience questions is, do you think that it's possible that we will learn something from China's global vision for the shared future, or will we continue to see it as a threat to the U.S., to the U.S. imperialist agenda? I mean, I think we even consider the term like shared future of humanity to be threatening,
Mhm.
which I mean, it makes sense when you consider that the wealth and power of the West relies on the exploitation and resource extraction of the global south. So of course, we're inherently against this global equality and are desperately seeking to maintain US hegemony, even at the expense of so many people, of the planet, and even the US itself in so many ways. And I also wonder, if we don't join in on this new polarity, multipolarity, on the new world order, accept it and become a cooperative member of it, what do you foresee happening instead? And do you think that, war is a possibility?
I think that the world is changing with science, with technology. It's making more information more available to more people. And it's inevitable it will be more equality amongst all people. To think that it's a small group of people still can dominating and calling all the shots, I think that's not possible uh, anymore. So I know it might be taking the United States, especially it has such dominant role in the world, to get adjust to it. It might take a while. It might take decades before they understand. Right now, it's always fighting. To me, is why are we always fighting? Why can't we work with each other? Even our politicians, once they get elected, is to attack each other's party and each other's policy. Nobody ever feel that, hey, you have a good idea. I will vote with you. It's this whole thing of destroying each other. It is very destructive to our country. In terms of war, uh, is it possible? Yes, but mostly because of miscalculation, because of uh, sometimes like challenging each other with military force and so forth, then something will go wrong, uh, and that could just creating uh, that kind of escalation. And then I think, but to me, so far, I think the United States, they have also learned their lessons. So hopefully they're not getting into war, but what they need to do is stop aching others to have war and supporting others to have war. I think that uh, we also kind of misrepresented ourselves because right now our military is not our formal military by using contractors. And that's very, very deceiving to our own people by buying mercenaries to fighting wars in other countries, even though they're American citizens or other citizens. So we need to stop that. I just feel that China is doing so well because in the last 40 years, they have not gotten into a war. they use their fundings, they use their energy to build a better country, and also building neighboring countries helping them. I would like to see United States stop having war and stop exporting war for the next 40 years. If we can do that, we will be a super country for the next century. But I don't know how a politician have that kind of foresight instead of just running every 2 years for Congress, or every 6 years for senator, or every 4 years for president. They only looking for the power, not for the people's benefit. I would say that Obamacare was the last thing that's really having to do with quality of life. Since then, I haven't seen a single congressional bill that's really benefiting for our daily lives. What are we doing? I mean, so I don't want to share this because I see so much, but I said, don't take my word for it. Go to China, take a look for yourself, talk to the people. A lot of the things is really, unfortunately, the media, the politician, I think they know the facts, but they choose not to let us know, and they choose dramatizing these facts and make it create fear for us. So again, I really think, China is very welcoming. A lot of places, people don't understand that. They think that it's close to the outside. No, even Xinjiang, such a disputed, in terms of U.S. have sanctions and so forth, you can just go. It's free to go. You don't need special permission to go. You can go there, but they in the news over here, it's just not, it's not representing the facts. And I understand journalists try to find eyeball catching type of news headlines. It's better to report bad news than good ones, but a lot of examples of what's going on, and we should not miss the boat. I think that by just having the standoff and so forth, is just holding ourselves back. We are killing our own industry first since 8 years ago by refusing selling chips to China. And I calculated at that time, Trump won. Huawei and ZTE, these two companies, Qualcomm, was selling $40 billion worth of chips to China, and we stopped it. So I went to China and asked them, so why don't you guys make chips? They said, well, chips, it's something that the shelf life is very short. It takes us 6 months to make a chip, and then the shelf life is 6 months, because 6 months later, better, cheaper, faster chips will come on. So we just buy from the United States. But since the United States putting this kind of hindrance on it, and by subsidizing our chip industries, we have no, if you don't sell to the biggest customer, there's no second customer can absorb that kind of volume and size. So what does that do? China is going to make their own. They're already making their own. And then they will be making cheaper, better ones, and they'll be selling to the world. And what's that going to lead us to our industry? Recently, Trump administration also tried to stop selling the jet engines to China. It's an engine that they both developed with France and so forth, because China having the I think what 919, they're not a very big jet, but it's a smaller jet and they're doing very well. So they buy our engines. They don't want to sell it. Well, there will be alternatives for China to find immediately engines. And secondly is they're going to develop their own. When they start making jet engines, guess what's happened? We're going to lose our market. And recently, I also think our education, if you call it industry, is the best one in the world, but we're destroying it. We're destroying our education. I saw a recent poll. It says 80% of the scientists want to leave the United States. So I said, oh, this must be Chinese American scientists because they feel the pressure. No, it's all of the scientists in the United States. They feel that there's the funding cuts and all of these things. They cannot do certain research. If I have to do a biology, boom. It's so we're hurting ourselves and we're shutting down some of our best industry. And hurt ourselves. So I hope we will stop doing that and really open our eyes to think what is the best for the United States. Certainly, it's not having tariffs. Certainly, it's not having export control. Basically, it's stopping our own company selling our technology abroad. So, anyway.
Thank you so much. I think we have some time for a few questions from the
Sure.
audience. So if you want to ask a question out loud, please put your hand up. Otherwise, put it in the chat, and please try to keep them relevant to the topic. I think the first person is Emmanuel.
Thank you so much for joining us virtually, and thanks, Ping, for hosting this. I wholeheartedly agree with an earlier point that worldwide communication is extremely important. I imagine the internet plays a great role in facilitating this. Can you talk about China's Golden Shield project and Great Firewall? There's a lot of what I understand is pro-US anti-China propaganda, claiming that blocking communications is a human rights abuse, and I'm confused by some articles that I've read that claim Cisco, a US company, provided a lot of the hardware for the Great Firewall. So may you please clarify and provide context for these programs, how and why they exist?
Sure. I talked to China, I would say that's 2012, so almost 13 years ago. I start to raise issues. I said, my Google Gmail doesn't work. I'm very vocal. And they sent someone to sit down and talk with me. They told me that, the reason it's not, most of the reason is not about political, but more about data. I think right now that 13 years later, most of the countries want to making sure that data remain within their own country. So China is saying, like Google, when we use Google in our country, that data is only shared with the United States government. It doesn't share with us, and they can sell this data. So one of it is people protecting the proprietary of the data. Now, in terms of some of the blockage, yes, and I'm very vocal about it. I have asked them to open this. I talk about it, but I think that we will see it's open. Right now, I recently visited the NYU Shanghai. It's a campus. I hope nobody from the congressional office is listening to our conversation. Otherwise, they're going to close them down. There's very successful programs. NYU Shanghai is one of them. The other is Duke Quinsan. And right now they're putting pressure on Duke to disassociate themselves. And then the other is with Schwartzman Scholar at the Tsinghua University. And there's a Kent College also. I went to NYU Shanghai visiting a campus, so I asked the chancellor, I said, well, what about internet? They said, it's all open. I said, open. How do you do that? They said, well, we told the Chinese government it's a research institution, so the internet must be open. So it's open. So there are proposals. I've been talking to people, they're proposing to open up, let's say, colleges, let's say 3-star hotel and up, just to open up first, and then make this work. I think this is something that you will see changes. China used to be very stickler about reciprocating of visa waivers. Right now, there's 43 countries. They just unilaterally giving the other side visa waiver without the reciprocating. So, and then once they experience it, they think, well, this works well. And so they would do that. Of course, China has a lot of issues, they have to overcome. But I think that certainly the people, students, a lot of people knows how to use firewalls as well. I think that that's really a legacy issue, and I hope opening up sooner than later.
Thank you. Over to Chino Che.
Yes, thank you, Megan, and thank you, Fred, for your participation. I also wrote this on the chat. I was wondering if Code Pink, my name is Irving Lee, by the way. I wonder if Code Pink is sponsoring another educational trip to China, because I think that there's a lot of support for that within the American community to find out what's actually going on. And if not, who do we contact in which we can have an educational trip? Who's sponsoring an educational trip out of the United States that we can utilize and go to? Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, of course. We just did a community trip in November, and just community members that were interested in going to China. It was, it was sort of through us, but also through a travel agency. And I think, now that we have like the connection and the itinerary, that I've been collecting people's emails who are interested in traveling to China, and then I'm just going to connect everybody with each other to go. We probably, it can be like a Code Pink community trip that can do like a similar itinerary. But yeah, we definitely recommend everybody travel to China. And if you go to codepink.org/travel to China, you can find the form to fill it out, and I'll just slowly collect emails until we have enough people to do a trip.
Okay, thank you.
I had a talk with Jody Evans about trips, and again, I'm more traditional, so I thought a trip. Okay, I said I can help you arranging the meeting with government. She said, no, we don't want to meet with government people. We just want to meet with. I really respect the way you put your trips together. We just want to meet with the common people on the street and to understanding how their lives are. So I really respect the way you guys are running your trip. So no government officials, none of that. But I do hope you guys will have chance to visit some of the companies. One of the company is called JD.com. They basically sell, retail things and so forth, like Amazon. I paid a visit to them, and it was really, really good. And so I can suggest some of the things not government related, so that you can also see from the business side, from different things as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah, we definitely emphasize meeting just with the people, but we also we wanted to tour like factories, see what's going on, just learn about everything in general. Zoe.
Hi, I have regarding because the U.S. Congress is drumming up, is preparing for war with China, because U.S. always has to have a war going on. Now people are the anti-war sentiment is getting stronger and stronger against the war in Gaza and the war in Ukraine. So now the U.S. strategically they are shifting their attention to China. So what do you think we should do as early as possible to kind of nip the just stop the problem from festering into a bigger one ahead of time, before it becomes like a reality. Now they're already Albridge Kobe's book was placed was placed on the top 10 list by Congress, and Albridge Kobe was proposing a limited nuclear war against China if necessary. So that's really alarming to me. So what do you think? Well, what are your thoughts about this issue?
I think war, short of being defending its own country, it's criminal. I think that advocating war anywhere because there's a profit opportunity, it's criminal. The United States keep on talking about Taiwan and the mainland China. Let me tell you, Taiwan people don't want to have a war with mainland China. And mainland China, they keep on talking about the Communist Party. Well, in the last, since 1949, who has the military power? That's the Communist Party. Who has the authority to launch an attack on Taiwan with its military? That's the Communist Party. But who restraining not to do that? Also the Communist Party. If you ask 99% of the Chinese people, they say, yeah, take it over. But the government does not want to do that. In fact, you will see more and more people in Taiwan want to reunify. And I hope, and I've been talking a lot about that. I think that the reunification should be by peaceful means, and it should be also initiated by the people of Taiwan. And I'm very hopeful, and I think I'm even confident you will see that day. That the sheer reason is that there's a lot of benefit for the people in Taiwan to be integrated with China. There are differences, of course. There are political differences, there mistrust of each other, and all these different things. But I think that they will see that without that, it's very hard for them to create the benefits. So I think that, you know, for us as Americans, I think we should keep on advocating peace. No war, peace. You know, really, war anywhere is just horrible, horrible. And the people just don't have heart. And I also feel bad for the veterans that come back from the war. Many of them, when they come back, their girlfriend, their family is no longer there. Many of them, when they come back, they're abandoned by the people. Many of them, they mentally cannot come back to our society. So war is a terrible thing to have, and we need to speak out more. My biggest worry is right now, President Trump is getting more and more of the military power. First, they announced a downsize of the 20% of defense, the 4-star generals of the Defense Department. That is not for budget cuts. Once they downsize the 20% of the 4-star general, they're going to promote their own loyalists to become 4-star general. Second, he is trying to federalize the National Guards of the states. These are all wrong things to do. We have these check and balance in place just to protect the democracy of our country. And once the military pledge their loyalty to an individual rather than the country, we'll be in big trouble.
Thank
Next.
you, Fred. And I think that's a good place to end. And for
Okay.
anybody that wants to learn more, advocate for peace with China, try to prevent a very possible and what would be a very catastrophic conflict for the entire world, you can visit equipping.org/China. I'll also send the links to stuff in a follow-up email for everyone. So I just want to thank you again for joining us tonight, Fred. We really appreciate it. And thank you to our audience for the great questions.
Yes, and anyway, you guys can go through Megan, and if you have questions to ask me,
Thanks, guys.
I'll try to answer. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.